an evil thing that people lie in their beds and plot to do it. They have the power to do it and they do it. You know, and that's obviously caused a great deal of pain for not only people in this country but around the world. We're not the only country, but there are similar structures in most of the countries where the people that are very powerful and wealthy have really hurt the people that are broken at the bottom. And, you know, so, you know, I think that pretty much says what's going on in the world, you know, and it's no different now than I think it was in Israel back then.
Yeah, we're not the first culture to do this, and we're not the only culture today, and not the first ones, but there's a lot of echoes through history and across cultures.
Seems remarkable that you know, they want to continually enlarge their estates when they don't need more, and they're taking from people whose it's their last, you know, last place where they can grow crops, their very house where they live, and it's just being aggregated into this giant, you know, so it speaks directly to the income inequality debate, speaks directly to, you know, the whole issue of, I don't know, in a word, greed, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Greed and coveting. There's a lot that's driven by that. Okay. Other comments or observations? Well, any specific suggestions on what an individual or a church should do in response? I mean, I can be disapproving of Visa, that it takes advantage of people and lets them build credit debt. I can dislike the payday loan places. Is there any response other than just, I don't like them, and that they're doing that and that's bad because they're covetous and greedy?
Well, we are going through this, government can step in and say we won't allow payday loan.
Mm-hmm. So through even legislation,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's one way that things certainly can be addressed. Any thoughts for a local church or an individual in response to these kinds of things?
I see especially in the latter half, 6 through 11, there's this naivete on the part of the people in general, not realizing, not thinking that there's anything particularly bad about their status quo.
Mm-hmm.
That everything is just okay. You know, it's just kind of the way it is. People get taken advantage of, and God's on our side. And I think that's the thing that in a church level is that nobody wants to hear about questions of injustice when it's systemic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when everybody's involved.
Churches have to become an advocate for their congregation and the poor in the community.
I think not only must the church become an advocate, but the church must educate the poor so they're not put in a position to be taken advantage of.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like the two responses are to stand up for the oppressed and to critique the oppressors.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, critique can be disapproval, but it can also be picketing. It could be
Editorials?
editorials. I mean, there's lots of ways to critique, but you know, I think the whole idea of justice mattering is the exciting thing, I guess, maybe that's not the best word, is, you know, this is an 8th century BC, and God's saying the same thing that he could be saying right now. You know, justice matters.
There's something I've been thinking, and as I'm hearing everyone say it seems like we're talking around it, and maybe it's so obvious to everyone else that you're like, well, duh. But it seems to me that it's easy for us to say, well, it's this group versus this group, or this
Yeah.
big, and it's really, what it seems to boil down to is what we need to do is make sure that people on an individual level are learning to think about these issues. Because I'm not so sure that it's always rich versus poor, as much as a certain type of person.
Right.
And it and I don't think that's ever what anyone actually said, it's rich versus poor. I think it's easy to slide into that way of thinking, that it doesn't matter where you are on any kind of an economic scale. You could be the oppressor and be one of the poorest people around. You could be the just one and be one of the richest people around. I'm not sure if I'm explaining what I'm
Yeah.
thinking very
No.
well.
No, we always
So-
want it to be a good guy, bad guy thing,
Right, and it's,
when
yeah,
maybe we're all the bad guys.
Yeah, well, it
that
comes,
could be.
can come back to, it's easy for us to say, okay, so there's oppressors in our society and there's oppressed, let's go help the oppressed and critique the oppressors, which is exactly right. But there's maybe another question to ask along with this is, how do I resemble the oppressors?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my
Personally,
question.
I don't identify myself as one of them. Of course I'm not one of them, I'm not rich, but maybe I am one of them in ways and attitudes that I don't really think of or face. So there's a self-examination that this calls for too.
And quite frankly, God's judgment is equal opportunity. It falls on the oppressed and the oppressors.
That's true.
The oppressed may be the
Well,
ones that come
that's
back.
true. I mean, you know,
Well, I mean, but they are. They're all swept up in this whole thing. And I'm not saying that God is judging the oppressed, but they get caught up. It's bad for everybody.
right, that's true.
And you know, maybe they are the ones that come back and get the property redistributed to them. But they may be the remnant, perhaps. There's no guarantee of that.
Well, the danger that I hear in that, though, is that it's all just individual sin. And, you know, I think one of the things that we need to think about is how do we, as a structural group, how have we set up our society in such a way that we allow oppressors? And, you know, I think that's, if everything's individual sin, then basically we can say, well, you know, I can do self-examination. You should also do self-examination, but that's the best I can do. And that doesn't sound like standing up for justice to me.
So I have a greater question. You know, we talk about the oppressor, but how do the oppressed put themselves in the position to be oppressed?
That's worth examining, without question.
One is lack of education.
And no one is greed.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Right. Playing the lottery.
Yeah. Yes.
I have to say that I find it very frustrating, having been a kid who had nothing, born and raised on a farm and so forth, who fought my way to the top, if you will. And I find it very frustrating. I tutor people who can't seem to get their education, trying to get them out of the level of where they're at to a better level. It's frustrating to me that young people are given the opportunity to go to school, get an education, they throw it away, and then society needs to come back and pick up the pieces. You know, when the opportunities are there for the students to take, and so forth. So there's, and you can make all sorts of arguments, but there's a lot of cultural thing that goes into why do these kids not succeed? And they have a lot of things against them. But I think that, you know, we were just discussing this at a women's ministry meeting the other day. It's the choices we make as we're going through some of the things that happen. Sure, there are, you know, not all of us live in safe neighborhoods, and I understand all that, but I think that you, the individual, must take advantage of the opportunities that are being given to them to try to be better. I realize that that's copping out, maybe, I don't know. And you guys
Well, I
all
think
have much more
that speaks directly to what I was just raising as, is it all individual sin? And there are certainly choices to be made, but we're not starting on a level playing field. When the place where you live, where your zip code determines how good your education is or not, that's not a level playing field. And when the color of your skin determines whether or not you can function effectively in a school, that's not a level playing field. So while there are certainly choices to be made and opportunities to be taken advantage of, there are also structural inequities that, I mean, if we ignore, then why are we talking about justice and mercy? So, you know, this is, we're supposed to be done at 9, so I just want to say I'm going to close in just a few minutes, and we can keep talking, but just fair warning that it's approaching the end point.
Yes, the end of all things is at hand. 1 Peter 4. Actually, maybe what I'll do is thank you for all that you've shared, and a lot of the applications, I think these are all well taken, have to do with examination of self, of church, and of how we relate to the society around us, and even to raise issues and think about, you know, do I look like an oppressor in ways, do I resemble the oppressor in ways that I don't catch, or that I'm just insensitive to, and you know, our point that society is broken on so many levels and in so many ways. There are opportunities, and maybe there's things even that like the church can do to help people seize opportunities that they may have things in their circumstances and environment that are discouraging them from seizing. So all of this very, very good and helpful. I want to close the Micah part with prayer and then let you close off the meeting however you would like. Father, thank you so much for this part of your word, and that you have revealed yourself to us through this. We thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because we are broken people who live in a broken world, and we know that. And it hurts sometimes very deeply. But thank you that you are a God who restores, that you knit things back together, and that that's where you're going. And that in the last day, round the throne, there will be a gigantic family of your people who will love you and worship you and praise you and serve you for eternity. Thank you, though, that we can begin to be part of that now. Show us how our stance as your children in relation to a society around us, in relation to people who are downtrodden and those who may tread on them, how that makes a difference right now in building towards what you will come and create in the last day. So may we be wise and reflective through the power of the Spirit to Jesus' glory and in his name. Amen.